What is up, everybody, and welcome to season 3, episode 18 of the Ear Hustling podcast. Wow, I will first. I'll just address the white elephant in the room, if you will. It's a little emptier today. It's a little emptier today. Only 3 people. But how are you doing, Soleil?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Prince?
I'm doing great. It's been a pretty good week so far. Uh, Definitely got rainy today. The storm is in full effect. It's coming in.
What, what's
Actually,
that? What's rain? I don't know what rain is.
that's true. You haven't even felt any of the effects. See, and
And I won't.
how about you, old man? Stressed on the emphasis on the old part.
Yeah, whatever, whippersnapper. I'm doing great. I know you're doing good. We might as well. First of all, why did the elephant have to be white today? I'm just curious. Usually people say the elephant in the room, but it's got to be a white elephant.
Isn't it? Is it not the white elephant in the room?
No, the white elephant is for Christmas. That's Christmas gifts.
Well,
But the elephant in the room. You know what? You're like that white police officer on Sanford and Son. You're too young to get the reference, but that's who you're being right now. But anyway, the day is going great. I know it's especially going great for you. We'll go ahead and talk about the other elephant in the room. I guess this one's gray. Soleil, he beat me in the national championship game with Texas. So he's happy. It was a game for the ages, 35-27, final score. It was a good game, but I know he's doing well.
That one was a black elephant.
Oh, okay, not a gray one. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Prince, you brought up the point that we're a little lighter today, not in white elephant color, but we're a little lighter in number of people here. Just want to throw out a quick, let people know we're thinking of Eric. He had something done today, and he's a bit under the weather, so definitely hoping that he feels better soon. And who else are we missing? Is there someone else we're missing?
Wasn't it like a P or something? A PP or something?
PP.
PP. How could I forget?
Yeah.
I forget? No, definitely thoughts and prayers with him and his family. They're in Florida, and they're are definitely potentially. Hi, mom. They're definitely gonna feel the effects potentially of Hurricane Helene. So thoughts are with them as they get ready to hunker down and get through this storm. So, but anyway, we are here. We are here. The show must go on. I must tell our listeners that I did get a text from Spectrum saying that they anticipate outages here in the area we live in. So hopefully we don't have that. But if we do, Prince and I are going to be falling off if that happens. Unfortunately, and Soleil got it. I just hope that Prince and I are not in mid-thought just talking and thinking we're going having a great show and we're not even live anymore. But anyway, let's jump into today's show. Today we want to talk about overcoming addiction. This is a very serious topic. We know that there's different types of addictions. There's lots of different stats out there that I'm sure at some point we're going to talk about. This is something that we want to talk about on a somewhat regular basis, on overcoming different types of addictions. So right now, I would like to bring to the stage Mr. Ron Green. We normally introduce our guests, but we're going to do something a little bit different. Ron, first and foremost, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Appreciate y'all having me on, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, Ryan, as I mentioned, we're doing something a little different today, and what I would like to do is I'd like to turn the floor over to you. I would like for you to introduce yourself, let us know who you are, let the listeners know who you are, and tell us your story.
All right. So yeah, before I do that, I was backstage and I'm still tripping off of the white elephant comment by Prince there. So I'm still trying to get through that. But it's all good.
I could have swore I had it right. But, a little slip of the tongue.
Yeah, it's all good, man. I'm just gonna overlook that. It's all good. Overlook that. But yeah, my name is Ron Green. I'm actually I'm all about young people, man. I'm the program developer for an organization called Four Corners Group. It's a youth development organization that targets at-risk, marginalized, underserved youth. I also live in the greater Atlanta area. I run a successful video production business called the Video Plug, where we help create content for businesses to help grow and scale. But that kind of just tells you what I do. It doesn't tell you really who I am. So I was born in the Midwest, born in South Bend, Indiana, right by Chicago, just right in that little cluster right there. And I grew up in the projects, man. You know, in the bricks, public housing, whatever you want to call it, the ghetto. And my mama had 6 kids. She raised us by herself. You know, my daddy wasn't around, and mama, she was uneducated, and she worked hard, and she worked long to try to put food on the table for all 6 of us, because we like to eat, you know. And mama just made sure that there was food on the table. But she took a long time. She was gone all day cleaning folks' houses to make sure we ate. And when she was gone, when I walked out my door, I saw, gangs, drugs, violence, criminal activity. It was just a jungle, man. And it wasn't long before I started making a lot of bad mistakes and bad decisions and hanging with the bad crowd and, things of that nature. So at 16, I started selling drugs. And by the time I was 17, I was a full-blown drug addict at 17. And that's kind of how it started for me at that moment.
Okay. All right. So, like, do you have anything for Prince?
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to say really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much, especially just for sharing everything and being so open. So I really appreciate it. I'll start off. Got a couple questions. I won't ask everything because I'm sure other people want to get to theirs as well. But I just want to say, what led you to start your journey with, I guess, overcoming your addiction?
Well, Prince, for me, I just got tired, man. So to pick back up on my story, and I can answer that for you. At 17, I was a full-blown drug addict at 17, and the next 27 years, I call them 27 years of darkness. I stayed in addiction for 27 years. I've been arrested over 30 times, been sent to the penitentiary on drug charges, became a liar, a thief, a cheater, a manipulator, a con man, because I was held captive by this addiction, and I didn't know how to fix it, man. My introduction to prison, the first 2 weeks I was there, I had my jaw broke in half in the fight. My mouth stayed wired shut for 7 weeks, and I drank all of my meals out of a straw. I lost 20 pounds off the rip, and I knew I didn't want to be there, but I couldn't leave, right? Because I had to serve a sentence. Even when I got out, I continued my drug addiction, man, and I ended up homeless, living in the woods. My house was a piece of cardboard that I taped together and stuffed it in the woods. I was actually the guy, when you're rolling downtown Atlanta, you get off on 75 and you go to maybe Phillips Arena or something. When you get off on that exit, there's usually a guy or a lady standing there and they're holding a cardboard sign. So that was me. I did that for a long time. I was holding a sign. That's how far it took me down to be holding a sign at the corner, man. I did that for a long time. But to answer your question, what changed my life, man, I'll never forget. This is what changed my life. I was holding that sign one day, and I hadn't had any dope yet, so I had kind of a clear mind. Early in the morning, it was raining, and people were driving by and they was laughing at me. And it was a junkie rolling the window down, just just being absurd. And I felt that moment. I felt helpless at that moment, right? I started to reverse engineer my life and start thinking about, how did I get here on this corner holding a sign at 44 years old? This was 10 years ago. I'm 54 now. So at 44, I'm holding a sign. How did I get here? So I started to look at that, and I thought about my kids. At this point, I had 6 kids now, and I was a dead dad. I wasn't around. I didn't do the things that daddies need to do. I wasn't a part of their life. I was a deadbeat dad, man, and that really hurt me. And I started thinking about how my mama was also close in proximity, but I couldn't go over there because she wouldn't let me in if I knocked on the door, because I would try to manipulate her out of money, so she wouldn't even let me in. So here I am, just invisible to the world. So what I did was I took that cardboard sign away. I went back in my little cardboard house and I got on my knees and I started praying, man. And I asked God, could he help me? I said, man, I don't know how to fix this. I've been doing it so long. Mama didn't raise me like this. Can you just please help me? I don't know what to do. And when I said that prayer and really meant it, something woke up inside of me. And I made my way to a treatment center in Marietta, Georgia. And I checked in. I stayed there for 1 year and I started to rebuild my life. So that's what the change was for me. That's what prompted me to start changing my life, is when I got on my knees and asked God for help.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. Going off of that, you had briefly talked about your relationships, about how you had kids as well, that unfortunately you weren't able to be in their lives. And so can you go into more about how, like, your addiction, it affected your relationships, how it perhaps affected your career and just your daily life in general?
Sure. So being addicted to drugs, it made me what I call an engagement breaker. And what the engagement breaker is, I'll get a call from one of my kids. Hey, Dad, I got this thing at school. Can you come? They want all the parents to be there. And I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll be there. And I never showed up because I was either too high or not high enough to be there. And so I never showed up, man. And so that affected my relationships with all of my kids. Really, really, it was a real bad relationship that I had with my kids. I have 6 kids, like I said. And it took me a while to rebuild those relationships. Now all of us are really, really good. We like as tight as we've ever been. But it took a lot of work to rebuild that. But I put in the work, man, to do that. So yeah, it just, being addicted, man, it affects your life overall. You never become the person that you need to be to do what you're designed to do. So you're always you're always coming from behind, if you will. You're never following through. People can't count on you. You lose respect for yourself. It's all about drugs, man, and drugs would really just kind of run your life until there's something to interrupt that process.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that you guys have a great relationship now. I'm happy to hear that was turned around. That's great. And last question I have for you for now. I definitely have some more questions, but I don't want to hog all the time. The last question I have for you for now is, you mentioned that you went to see a treatment center. What were some of the challenges that you faced while seeking out treatment and while getting treatment?
Yeah. So a big challenge with treatment is, a lot of people need a long period of time to rebuild their life and really get their life in order after addiction. And the challenge that I had was, those places usually cost money. You got to have insurance. So that was a challenge. And God, I got to give God credit. He knew what he was doing. He put me right in this place this place is called The Extension. That's the name of this. It's a homeless shelter and a drug rehab, and it's free. It's a nonprofit and a 1-year program, which means, listen, I didn't have to worry about shelter. I didn't have to worry about, having insurance. So that is almost unheard of. Even to this day, that organization is still there. I go there. I now teach life skill classes there to the men that come in that program. To this day, I do it every Tuesday from 6 to 7. So I get back in that way because I know what it feels like to come through those doors. But that was a big challenge, is finding a long-term program that my financial status didn't, wasn't a major deal in that. That's number one. And during the process, I think a major challenge was just learning all the stuff that I learned in my life was a lie. So I had to essentially relearn, this whole system of life. You know what I mean? Like, I always was taught from the streets is me first, everybody else second. Just all of those things that I taught. I had to relearn that stuff. So that was challenging to reprogram yourself to new philosophies and new ideas, and to be able to take those in and build a different belief system. That's very difficult to do. That's called changing. And only person that likes change is a wet baby. That's it. A lot of people don't like to change, man.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was another challenge right there. But as time went on, it got easier.
Okay. Oh, well, like I said, I appreciate you answering those. Very insightful. I know that was my last question, but I do want to give this one question from the audience real quick, based off of what you asked. Is the extension only for men?
Great question. So it is not. They have a women's extension too. Of course, they're not in the same building, though. That would be crazy, right? So, but they are in the same proximity. So you have a men's extension and a women's extension that are probably no more than 4 miles apart in the same city of Marietta. So there's for men and women. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, like I said, appreciate you. Thank you for your honesty and your openness with answering those. I'll pass it to you, sir. James.
So Brian, as Princess said, thank you so much for sharing. One of the questions I had for you earlier on was before the show was, is there anything off limits? And you're like, hey, I'm an open book, and I totally appreciate that and respect that. You mentioned that your mom kind of didn't allow you to come in, didn't open the door for you. In that moment, during that time, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like an outsider. It just made me feel like I was an outsider, yeah. But I gotta give, her, it was just tough love, and I get it now 100%. But it made me feel like an outsider. But it also pushed me to want to get help. Those are one of the things that when I thought about that, it drove me to want to do better and get help. So I give my mama some credit. And then when I was seeking help, she did her part, man. She helped me out so much during that time in the extension. She really, really helped me out. So that was good.
Yeah. Did you get an opportunity to repair the relationship with your mom the way you did with your children?
Absolutely, man. My mom like this, like all those relationships in the family that I destroyed, they're all mended now. Like me and my dad he's my best friend. My mama, me and her's like this. I go over her house at least probably once a week or once every couple of weeks. She's still local, and now she's dealing with some health issues herself. And I get to take her to these doctor's appointments, and I get to be the person that is not an engagement breaker, but I'm showing up there and I'm being on time and I'm taking her to these places. So I get to do stuff like that now.
Awesome. That's great. There's a mother, there's a father, there's a brother, sister, husband, wife, someone out there listening right now, or it's going to listen to this show later on in the future, that's dealing with a loved one that has an addiction, whatever that may be. What would you say to them on how they can support their loved one?
I would say is the number one thing to support them is just never give up on them. Okay, never give up on them. But also here's a very tricky thing. So always believe that they can get better because they can, but also don't enable them to the point you push them to death either. And what I mean by that is people had to shut the door in my face, man, for me to be like, okay, maybe I need to because through that 27 years, a lot of times I had a place to to crash. They would say, "Come on in," and they would feed me, and that just really kept me in my addiction because I can feel no consequence. But when people start saying, "Hey, you can't come over here, man. You can't do this. You know, you got to sleep in the woods, sir," that pushed me more to recovery and wanting to get better. So I would say, believe that they can change. Never doubt them. Never believe. Never leave. Never let your belief in them go. But also, don't enable them. That's very important.
Okay. Well, as Princeton said, I got one more for you right now, Ryan. I think that's where it gets a little tricky, I would imagine. How would you recommend someone who has a loved one that has an addiction, but they haven't identified their addiction yet? I think the first step is acceptance. So as that loved one, how do you support that person?
So if a person has not, and this is going to sound pretty tough, but this is what I learned. If a person has not came to the realization that they have a problem, the only thing that you're able to do, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of professionals, is to pray for them. That's it. A person cannot, if they don't see themselves as having a problem, there is nothing that you can do for them until they say, "Hey, I want help," and then you're able to come in and jump in and help. But until then, I don't care how many motivational speeches you give them. If they're not ready, they're not even hearing that. We not hearing none of that.
All right. Great advice. Thank you. Soleil?
Yeah. Once again, Ron, thanks for being with us tonight. I echo the sentiments of Prince and James. So I want to piggyback off of what you just said. So your faith seems to be very prevalent and powerful in your life. Was that something that has always been there through your youth and while you were going through the 27 years of homelessness and addiction, or did that come right before sort of your breakthrough into recovery?
Great question. Great question. So no, I went to church with grandmama and them, as a kid, and so I always believed in God. But what happened was, the negative influences that I was exposed to kind of took over. Not saying that I no longer believed in God, but I put him in the back room somewhere. But my faith was already still there, which is why I was able to allow that to resurface when I got to the extension. When I got there, man, I started going to a church right around the corner. I would walk there every Sunday from the extension. So luckily for me, it was already ingrained in me. I just needed to feed it.
Okay, great.
And I did, and I fed the hell out of it too.
Awesome. Can we talk a little bit about what led you into addiction? You said you were 17, from Gary, Indiana. If anybody knows, Gary is a challenge. I'm from Detroit, by the way, so very similar. But what was it about that time period in your life that sort of led you into trying drugs for the first time? Was there a progression from something sort of lighter, then progressing to something harder? Can you just dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So at the core, as I look in the rear view at my life, and I look at it in the rear view a lot now, at the core for me, it was a lack of a model. I had no model, no person that modeled positive behaviors or anything in my life. I didn't. Mama was going all the time, and everybody that I knew modeled bad behaviors. So me having the lack of a really positive role model in my life, that was a major factor. Number two, esteem. We grew up poor. I remember playing basketball and trying out for the basketball team, and I had holes in the bottom of my shoes. People, kids was laughing. So I had an esteem issue. So whenever you have a huge esteem issue, then you seek out things to try to fit in with everybody, because you don't really love yourself. So you're trying to fit in, and you'll do almost anything to fit in. And that was another thing that fueled me to start experimenting and stuff like that, was my own low self-esteem, and not having not being pretty secure in who I was, and not really loving myself as a young person. So those are two major factors. And then just the environment in itself. So I would say those three: role model, lowest self-esteem, and a destructive environment, all played a part in leading me to start experimenting and ultimately becoming addicted.
Thank you for that. So, do you still get the urge? How do you deal with that when it happens? What are some scenarios where, like, if you're under stress from work, at a deadline, are the urges more during those periods? Or if you get into, I don't know if you have a partner or not, but if you did, like if you got into a fight with your partner, does that make you want to turn back to drugs? Like what are the struggles that you still have today?
That's a great question. So and I got to answer that, and it's a bright spot in the world of recovery. So I don't have any obsessions to use today. Drugs and alcohol, which are the same. It's all drugs. They have no value for me. So if I get mad and I am married. I've been married 5 years, and trust me, if you ever been married, and James could probably attest to this, sometimes you're not going to agree with your spouse, and y'all going to have a little spat, So, but me being under that kind of pressure, I never even think twice about going to use. There's no value in using today. There's no value in it, because I understand what's at the end of that. So there's no value. Now, let me say this. The reason I don't have an obsession is because I'm well connected, which means that I'm, one of the things that we learn in recovery is to serve. That's the 12th principle, is service. I'm always serving others. I'm serving at the extension. I'm serving at Four Corners Group. So I'm using my experience to help other people. That helps keep me clean and keeps the urge at bay, if that makes sense. So I said all that to say, if I wasn't involved in stuff, if I'm not helping, giving back, and I'm not doing all these things, I'm just running my business and that's it, and I'm not really connected to anything, then guess what? Drugs could start looking pretty good to me, if that makes sense. So yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I'm just always curious. I know people who struggle with addiction, so I was just always curious what triggers, just so I don't trigger anything in them. So that's good to know. Right. I have two more questions. Yeah. So the people that I guess you initially did drugs with, or over the years when you were experiencing homelessness, did drugs with, like, have you gone back to try to help them, whether it's teach them about God to get over their recovery, or get them into the extension to help them recover? How has that gone?
Yeah, so I've helped a lot of people. I've actually got a lot of people into the extension. I'm not going to say I go looking and seeking out people. That's not how that works. I don't know. Sometimes the way the world works, I find out that somebody that I knew is struggling and they're ready, and then I could take action. But I don't go like say down in the hood to where I know there's a lot of drugs and I know people that are still in their active addiction. I don't do that's very dangerous. Not as much physically dangerous, but in terms of addiction dangerous to do that and put myself at risk and stuff like that. So that in that regard, no. But when I understand that people are ready, that I knew that are ready and they want to make a change, I've gotten several people in at the extension and have helped a lot of people, get their lives back on track.
Awesome. I love that. And the last one for me, a little lighter, but you own a video production company.
Mm-hmm.
Was that always like a passion of yours, like from your youth, or was that something that you discovered a talent in later on?
Yeah. So this was a talent I didn't know I had. Everybody, I always say nobody came to this world without a gift. And a lot of us have multiple gifts. I didn't even know I had this gift. This was actually a pivot during the pandemic. I'm in youth development. I, build programs, facilitate trainings. When the pandemic hit, all that went away. Funding went away. So I had to pivot. So what I did was simply, one thing I knew I didn't want to do anymore. I did not want to go, for me personally, I didn't want to go punch a clock because I've been doing that all my life. And it was usually to make other people wealthy. So the extension, I learned that I had some great stuff and I could do almost anything. I was pretty much unstoppable. And I say that from a place of humility, not from a place of arrogance. But it taught me that, man, we got some great stuff inside of us. So I was at home and just thinking, what can I do to generate revenue, something that I would love to do, at this time. And I thought about video because, number one, I'm a creative guy, always have been. And number two, video was really amplified by the pandemic. So it's pandemic proof and everybody was going to video. So I just told myself I'm going to build a video production company. I had no film training. I had never even picked up a professional camera in my life, but I knew I could do it because I used to hold a cardboard sign at the corner, right? So I knew I could do it. And I just went to the University of YouTube. Every day I studied on YouTube and I learned what equipment to buy. I learned what editing software to get. I learned how to shoot a camera. I learned all of it. And then that's kind of how it started.
Awesome. Thanks again for being here. And I will shoot it over to Prince.
Yeah, glad I was able to get back to ask you a couple more questions. I just got a couple more for you, and I'll be out of your hair. So one of my last questions is, you talked about what advice you'd give to someone reaching out to someone who may have an addiction after they've let it be known. But what advice would you give to someone who currently has an addiction? Maybe they do want to start to seek help, but perhaps they don't have those relationships to reach out to. What advice would you give to someone like that?
All right. The first thing I would tell that person is, number one is never give up and believe in yourself. That's number one. Because if you don't, you gotta, at the core, you gotta have some kind of belief. So believe in yourself is number one. Number two, I would say, if I were talking to them or had anything to say to them, I would point them directly to the extension. The extension just built a new building. They like doubled the population. The population that they had, that is doubled now. So they usually have beds open now. So I would definitely tell them to if they are ready and serious, to number one, believe in themselves. They have something great inside of them that the world is waiting on. And number two, get your butt into the extension. I would tell them those two things right there.
Okay. I think that's great advice. And lastly, I know you've talked about significant lessons that you've had so far, but I don't believe I remember you giving one specifically. What would you say, looking back on it, has been the most significant lesson that you've learned from your experience?
Yeah. So I think, and that's a great question. I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that this life that I live, it has nothing to do with Ron Green, but it has everything to do with how I can impact the lives of other people. That's the biggest lesson I learned. I'm not here for, I wasn't put here for me. I was put here for others. And when I learned that lesson, my life took off like this. I mean, things fell in my lap. I mean, just it's crazy. But I had to, once I learned that and began to operate in that space of service, it was all over, man. It's all she wrote. I mean, I'm telling you, I can't be stopped.
Okay. That's what's up. Well, hey, I appreciate you once again. That's all I got for you. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
And I don't think that's it, though. You got a few more, James?
Yeah, I got a few more. I'm ready.
Right. All right.
Come on with it.
Ryan, leading up to this show, I did a little research, and something I saw. USA Today did a article back in March of this year, and the numbers kind of startled me, and some information startled me, and you kind of reiterated one of the things that they mentioned. It said 48 million Americans struggle with substance abuse. That's a really high number. It also went on to say something you mentioned that I was not aware of, that alcohol is the most used drug, followed by tobacco and marijuana. I did not know alcohol was considered a drug. So that one thing that I thought about is when I've had some conversations with people who have overcome addiction, they say, if I was on drugs, I don't do alcohol. Now it makes sense why. How do you handle yourself in social situations when other people may be having a beer at a game? How do you handle yourself in those situations?
Great question. So let me take you through that. So again, right now I'm at 10 years clean. However, when I first left the extension, and it was my second year in recovery, I made it a point to stay away from gatherings like that. I just made it. I wasn't comfortable enough yet. But I think it's a progression, because now I'm married, and I'm gonna tell you, my wife, she get it in with the alcohol, right? And I can, and so she drinks socially, but I can now be at weddings, graduations, social gatherings. Even when I'm running these businesses, I'm meeting business owners, and we got these gatherings, and there's always champagne, alcohol. And back to the point I made earlier, I'm able to be in those spaces without any desire to use at all. So for me, it's easy as long as I'm doing the work. And when I'm saying doing the work, I mean staying plugged in at the extension. I mentor people, I mentor young kids. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So there's no value there. So I'm in a lot of circles where there's a lot of alcohol, and it doesn't faze me at all, because it has no value. So if that answers your question, but it wasn't always like that. I had to build myself up to that, so I had to be smart about it in early recovery. Now, I transitioned to this stage here.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. I think back to a personal story I have. Matter of fact, Patrick, who's not on the show today, he and I used to bowl together. And there was a gentleman, we was in a trio league. The third person on our team was someone we didn't know. And Patrick and I would have, a couple beers, throughout bowling. And this guy would never drink. And finally, one day he told us that he was a recovering alcoholic, but it was okay for us to continue to drink.
Sure. Yeah.
And honestly, thinking back on it, Ron, I look back on it and say, you know what, I should have stopped drinking in front of him, because I feel like it's I don't want to say the right thing to say, that it's okay for you to do, because, who's going to stop another grown person from doing what they want to do, right?
Right.
But what if that wasn't his real feeling? So what would you say to a person who is around someone who's a recovering addict, and they say, it's okay if you do it, it's just not for me? should that person just be a little more conscious of not doing it, or should they just take them for their word and do what they want to do?
Well, that's a person by person decision. For me, it's for me, it could be a little dicey. So let me bring some context to that. My brother, so I had my brother, I got him into the extension. His drug of choice was alcohol. After I was so many years clean, he was struggling bad, so I got him in. And he went in, he finished the program. But once he came out, I knew that he was fresh out, and I would have stuff over like my wife would have, it would be like Thanksgiving or something, and everybody would come over to our house, and there would be alcohol there. But because I knew because I have the information that he was fresh out, we took all the alcohol and put it in the back room. And if you want to go have a drink, you go in the back. So we made that decision to do that. And I made that decision because I understood where he was. And I've been in that early recovery stage. So I'd say, if I'm armed with that information like that, then yeah, I definitely would say adjust. But here's another thing. If a person says that it's a person that has struggled with addiction and they're in recovery and they say it's okay, you have to look at it like this too, because I've been in that position where I don't want people to change because I'm around, and you that messes up the whole thing, especially if I'm well in recovery and I'm okay. I want people to move around through that event like they normally would, because it makes me feel better, and to know that I'm not getting everybody to adjust for me, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Okay. Ron, I've thought numerous of ways on how I was going to close the show, as far as with questions, and of course, my wife comes through with the perfect way. So I'm going to share her question. She said, "Thanks for sharing your story. What is your ultimate goal, and what does the future look like for Ron Green?"
Great question. So, ultimate goal is, I'm working right now with the executive director at Four Corners Group, and we're building this curriculum out. And our ultimate goal is to start an independent school. All right. Maybe like grades 6 through 12, middle school, high school, build it from the ground up. And it's going to be a kind of a different learning process for kids, right? I think some of us can agree, and I think even maybe Shay will agree with this, but the current, I've been to a lot of schools, and a lot of the systems and processes in these schools have been the same for so many years, man, and they're outdated and antiquated. And I think a lot of young people, especially people who look like me and you and your son and Salon there, are getting left behind because it's a cookie cutter system. What we want to do is erect a school that really identifies the gifts in each individual student and start to hone in on those gifts, talents, and abilities. Somebody might be gifted in art, or someone might be gifted, just so many different gifted areas, but we want to be able to identify that through DISC assessments and personality assessments, and then work on their gifts, as opposed to putting in this kind of ABCD kind of deal. So to erect a different philosophy, or the different way of teaching young people with an independent school is one of my biggest dreams that I want to do.
Awesome. Ron, I do have one last thing. If you don't mind sharing, and I know Shay's listening, she's going to be able to take note as well, so we can put it on our Facebook page. what are some websites people can go to? If you have any contact information for the extension, for Four Corners, anything you want to throw a plug out for, that'd be helpful to any listeners today.
All right, so let's start right now with addiction. So if you're struggling right now, you can go on the website to theextension.org, and you can really do like your little screening right there on the website, and start your entry process right there on the website. Again, that's theextension.org. And then also the Four Corners Group, youth development organization. If you want to get involved or got youth you think that could utilize what we do, that's going to be four spelled out like the number four, FOUR, Four Corners. That's plural. fourcornersgroup.net. fourcornersgroup.net.
Great. To your knowledge, on fourcornersgroup.net and theextension.org, is there a place where if anyone was feeling charitable that they can give on the website as well?
Both of those places do have they definitely got a donate here button on both of those. Definitely.
Perfect. All right. Ron, thank you so much for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. And like I said earlier on, we got to work on you getting that Detroit Lion cap. So we're going to work on that.
Yeah, I got one closing quote, if I may, before we get out of here.
Yes.
All right, so I love this quote. This quote is for when you see someone in addiction doing bad. This is a quote by a person named Gerda. Gerda says, "If you look at a man the way that he is, he only gets worse. But if you look at a man as if he were what he could be, he becomes what he should be." Right? So one of the greatest things the extension done for me is when I got there, they took us on a trip and they was reading this list out and they called me Mr. Green. They said, "Mr. Green, you're going in this van." I was like, whoa, he called, because I was used to being called junkie or dope fiend. He called me Mr. Green. So that is so important that if to do that.
Wow. Thank you for that, Ryan. Definitely. All right. Well, thanks once again. Really appreciate it. Shay has those websites out on the site, so we're definitely gonna put that out there as well. And we appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate the Ear Hustling Podcast. I appreciate y'all. It's all good. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Take it easy.
All right. Have a good night. Wow. Very, very, very impactful, y'all. Definitely.
Yeah, that's good conversation.
Yes.
He's a great speaker too.
Yes. We probably could have kept him on for another hour easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
If there were two others here, we know he would have.
Yeah, we would.
Oh, most definitely. All right, moving along. Soleil, we are coming to you for this day in history, and it almost feels a little weird talking about overcoming addiction, and then you're going to give us your picks for the week. So that felt a little weird talking about that. So I feel like we might be, encouraging some. So hopefully that's not the case. But
you can
gamble responsibly.
Safely gamble. You can safely gamble.
Yes,
you can.
And actually, I had to go through responsible gaming training today at work, so I'm fully aware of the dangers of gaming or gambling addiction. But to get to this day in history, it's a very important one, actually. On this day in 1957, the Little Rock Nine began their first full day of classes. You could Google the whole story, but what this is after the Supreme Court in 1954 ruled unanimously in the Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas, that racial segregation in educational facilities was unconstitutional. This white school in Arkansas accepted its first 9 students of color on this date in 1957. I encourage everybody to Google it if you don't know I mean, I knew bits and pieces of the story, but when you really look at the effort that the governor of the state at that time tried to keep segregation in place, even though the president at the time, and the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional, and the president had to get involved and send not Secret Service, but like military people to go
National Guard.
National Guard. Yeah. It's just fascinating what these 9 people went through. I know one of the kids got acid threw in her face. They needed National Guard protection the entire year that they were in school. One person got kicked out of school. They threw chili on somebody who was bullying them, and nothing happened to the other child. But anyway, it's fascinating stuff. This is a part of our history. It's a big deal. And so, yeah, Google that and learn more about that.
And so, like, real quick, what was the name of that group again? Someone just chimed in and they caught the tail end.
Yeah, the Little Rock 9, Little Rock,
awesome.
Arkansas.
Now, I believe one of the people of those 9 was Eric Smith. I think he was part of that. I'm sorry.
I guess the dates do line up.
It does. Either he was one of the students or he was the National Guard. I don't know.
Or
but he was there.
He was a teacher. No, he wouldn't be a teacher.
Probably not at that school.
Not at that one. No.
But it's just amazing, like how, and we're seeing it today play out, like how much effort that they made to keep segregation. My mother was 7 years old at that time. She was in Alabama. So I'm just curious what the thoughts of people were during that time who lived through it. So
wow. Look at Goldie. She says she's from Arkansas. I'm very familiar with the story. Spent some time at that school in Little Rock. Beautiful campus.
Hi, Goldie.
That, Soleil, to your point, 1957, Prince hold all jokes. That was not that long ago.
No.
It really wasn't. It was not that long ago. So sometimes when we start talking about racial conversations, people make it sound like it was like BC, right? But it was not that long ago. Prince and I, of course, Shay is here in Georgia. And there's been time, the city that Princeton went to high school in Canton, Georgia, that's a city that we used to look out our window. Shay and I, especially Princeton, just like, hey, just give me to school. But Shay and I would look out our window and like, just 30 years before, we couldn't live there.
Maybe 10.
Right? I mean, Soleil, I kid you not, and I don't remember the city, so you caught me off guard here. We've been in Georgia for 18 years. When we first moved to Georgia, within the first few years, there was still a county that had segregated proms.
Wow.
That's insane to think about. But anyway, I digress. Great story, Soleil. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now it's time for what everybody is here for. Soleil's picks for this week. So let's start with.
You need some music.
We do need
some music for this. You're right.
Oh, for the year, I am 8-1 on Soleil's picks on this show. 8-1. Last week was another back-to-back undefeated week. Just to recap, and let me say this is for entertainment purposes only. Do not gamble more than what you have. This is just what I bet on, and I stay within a budget. Okay. So last week, I had Illinois, 9.5-point underdogs against Nebraska. They won outright. How about that? 2 weeks in a row, I had a 7+ more underdog win on the road. I had Seattle at home versus Miami, 5.5-point favorites. They won that. That was kind of easy. Tua wasn't going to play. And then I had Buffalo at home, -5.5 versus Jacksonville. They blew Jacksonville out. So perfect 3-0 week, 8-1 for the year. So here are my picks for this week. I'm going with another Never mind. I'm not going with another.
Whoa.
I'm going with Dallas tomorrow on the road against the Giants, minus 5.5 points as the favorite. I'm going with South Alabama plus 21.5 versus LSU on the road. South Alabama has a good offense. I think they got what's that guy's name? Major Applewhite as the coach or play caller.
Oh,
LSU hasn't been great this year, so I think South Alabama could cover the 21.5. And then I'm taking James Madison minus 20.5 points against Ball State. James Madison hung 70 last week against North Carolina. They have to be able to blow out Ball State by 21 points. So those are my picks. Dallas, road favorite, 5.5. South Alabama, plus 21.5 road dogs. James Madison, 20.5 favorite against Ball State.
I'm betting my life savings. I'm going now.
What do you think 20? What do you think 20 cents going to get you?
I'm trusting that the play caller, like she said, will do their job.
Soleil, you got me. I'm not gonna lie, you got me good. When you said Major Applewhite, I'm like, there's no way he's still eligible. I'm like, I know it's. I'm like, he's still playing. What the heck? I mean, I know. Anyway.
I think that's his name.
Yeah. Okay. I remember him. I remember the name. But anyway. All right. Next week we are back, and maybe we'll be full strength. Maybe not. We'll see. Season 3, episode 19, Americans Living Abroad. We currently have 4 guests that are going to be on. That is going to come to us and talking about their experiences. 3 are currently living abroad, and 1 person used to. So we're going to get different perspectives. 1 person has already agreed to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So definitely looking forward to that. So next Wednesday, October the 2nd. Yeah, October, there it is on the flyer. October 2nd, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tune in to our show, and we're going to be everywhere that we normally are. We're going to be on Facebook and YouTube, and here, right down there, is our social media platforms where you can follow us. Click like, share, whatever else you got to click. and subscribe. That's it on YouTube. So you know when we are going live. All that stuff. But definitely tune in. If for nothing else, for Soleil's picks.
That's right.
Prince, I am going to turn it over to you, sir.
All right. So this week I felt like it'd be a good week to talk about, something that's currently happening, going on with the storm, the hurricane coming through. So I just wanted to discuss, normally when a storm is coming in, when you have bad weather, when you think you might lose power, things you want to have on hand. You want to make sure that you have non-perishables. You want to make sure that you have a backup source of power, or maybe candles, things like that. So what I don't understand is, I've worked in retail for years now. Why is it when a hurricane is coming through, when bad weather is coming through, everybody flocks to the stores, and the first things they buy are milk, bread, and toilet paper? Well, it doesn't make sense to me. If things go awry, what is bread gonna do for you? That's not gonna last long enough. Bread can only get you so far. I mean, toilet paper, yes, it is something you should have, but I don't think you need 50 rolls for the hurricane. That's not going to save you. And the milk, yes, milk is nice, but it's just not a necessary thing. People need to get their list down. They need to find out what's important in life, what's important in a storm. Get maybe a knife, get some candles, get batteries, backup power sources. Stop wasting all your money on bread, milk, and toilet paper. I'm just trying to give a PSA. I'm just trying to help out. So that's all I got for you guys.
Thank you for that. I mean, I'd say when
good advice.
it comes to milk, I'm just say keep a pregnant woman around.
That's wow.
That's a
Man.
solution.
Okay, Homelander. Okay.
All right, y'all. Great show today, and we're about to get off of here, and we got some off season to take care of.
Sounds like a plan.
And for Patrick, for PP.
Yes,
PP.
Have a good night, everyone.